Hey, maybe it's just me, but it really seems like Ray Fisher's a little bit difficult to work with. Maybe they need a new Cyborg. That's what I'm thinking. Rumor, Cyborg actor Ray Fisher wants changes made to script for the Flash film. This is coming from Bounding Into Comics. Let's get into the article. While it seems likely that Ray Fisher will reprise his role as Cyborg in the upcoming The Flash, despite his recent outspoken criticism of Justice League's production team, a new rumor claims that the actor has made some demands for changes to the film's script. Ray is now a writer, and his demands need to be met because he's got a better way to tell the story of Cyborg within Flash. We'll see. The last few months have found Fisher on the warpath against top Warner Brothers brass over his treatment on the set of Justice League under backup director Joss Whedon, who was brought in to finish the film after Zack Snyder abruptly left the project. Can you imagine you're trying to create a multi-billion-dollar movie and build your whole franchise? You've done all that, and now all of a sudden Zack Snyder, the director, isn't available to actually finish directing the movie, so you've got to bring in someone else. You actually get the guy, Joss Whedon, who worked on Avengers, and now you got to fight with your Cyborg character. It's almost like they're fighting with Cyborg, the character, not even Ray Fisher. And what are they even fighting about? That's a good question. Let's get further into it. Before we do, if you want to support my work, collegeofthedead.com, pick up a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day. It ships immediately because it's already done, and you can also get the first one as well if you'd like to. It's a very, very cool story, ongoing zombie apocalypse series. Also, epicmermaids.com will take you to The Mermaids. Sign up for the email list. We're going to be launching this one soon. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. All right, back to the article. So this is a tweet from Ray Fisher. Joss Whedon's on-set treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. He was enabled in many ways by Jeff Johns and John Berg. Accountability is greater than entertainment. This is something that strikes me as a little disturbing too, because I've hired a lot of creative people and had the pleasure to work with them. Some of them are great to work with and really reliable. Some of them really are troublemakers, and you can't depend on them. The ones you can't depend on, we don't hire again. It doesn't matter how good the work is. If somebody is not reliable and they develop on their own a reputation of not being reliable, they threaten the entire project, and it affects everyone creatively, and affects everyone else on a project financially, and it affects the consumers. So accountability is greater than entertainment is actually correct. All working relationships should be professional. Everyone should be held accountable. Now, in a creative environment, do you have creators that disagree, that argue, that curse, and all that? Yeah, of course, absolutely. That's how it works. But one of the things you don't do is try to ruin someone's reputation by speaking inappropriately about them publicly. You try not to do that because you understand that, look, things can get heated sometimes, and everyone's under a lot of pressure. So whatever happened to Ray Fisher, it's starting to kind of like sneak out a little bit that Jeff Johns supposedly gloated that there could be a new Cyborg. So his boss, Ray Fisher's boss, Jeff Johns, was saying like, hey, we could always get another Cyborg, supposedly. Like, well, sorry, but yeah, you are not Cyborg. You are playing Cyborg in one of the movies, and maybe in another one of the movies. If we can work with you. That is how it works. Jeff Johns supposedly threatening Ray Fisher's career. Threatening your career is saying to someone, hey, listen, man, I don't know if you didn't learn this when you were growing up, but we all have to get along and make sacrifices. We all are a player in a larger picture. So we all have a boss. So yeah, you can make suggestions, but you don't get to decide. The decision maker there are not 18 decision makers on a project. The more decision makers on a project, like you have a director, you have a screenwriter, you have producers, you have powerful people in the studio. Like, you have to understand who the decision makers are. Like, who's the dog and who's the tail. A friend of mine told me that one once. I like that. Like, you can wag your tail, but the dog is the dog. And sometimes you get to be the dog, sometimes you're the tail. It just depends on who you are in the whole structure of the environment. And one ensemble character can't dictate what it is that they want in a script. You otherwise can't produce the project because you have 30 people trying to say, well, I think this should happen, I think that should happen. Like, you can't let Aquaman say what Aquaman's going to say to Batman. You can make suggestions, but you can't let everybody run amok. Fisher has also accused then DC President and Chief Creative Officer Jeff Johns of threatening his career after these concerns were brought to light, and claimed that the president of DC Films attempted to throw Joss Whedon and John Berg under the bus in hopes that I would relent on Jeff Johns. So now he's creating conflicts up the chain to try to say, like, well, the Jeff Johns said this about Joss Whedon. During the LA reshoots for Justice League, Jeff Johns summoned me to his office to belittle, in other words, to put him in his place. Because, playing Cyborg doesn't mean that you control the destiny of Cyborg. Playing Batman doesn't mean you control the destiny of Batman. And admonish my agents' attempts to take grievances up the proper chain of command. He then made a thinly veiled threat to my career. This behavior cannot continue. This is, okay, sometimes I get a sense about these things. This behavior cannot continue is what Ray Fisher was told by Jeff Johns. I would almost bet on it. Telling Ray he needs to get his behavior under the F control. Get it under control, Mr. Fisher. Or you got to understand, we're not going to want to work with you. And really, even if up the chain with the president of Warner Media was like, I kind of like this Ray Fisher guy, but you have to understand, even if the CEO of Warner Media is like, hey, I like Ray Fisher, he's a handsome guy, he makes a great Cyborg, let's try to have a business relationship with him. If Jeff Johns or the new president of DC Films, who is responsible for Aquaman and the success of Wonder Woman, if they were like, look, yeah, but you got to understand, he's great on paper, but when you're working with him, he's incredibly difficult, and it throws everything into delays and jeopardy. You need, as talent, you need the recommendation of the people who you work for. Even if you don't give it, you don't need people observing that you're difficult to work with. So make your deadlines, cooperate with talent. If you're part of a team, if you're doing your own thing, you're the boss. If not, don't make it difficult for the people that you work with. That's like the best advice I could give. Like, don't have fights. See how Ray Fisher is doing this? Can you imagine if Jeff Johns was ratting out Ray Fisher? What Ray Fisher has said, and what his agent has said, and the unreasonable demands that they've made? That this is now so ridiculous it's public? So you can better understand how deep this goes. How deep is it, Ray? After speaking out about Justice League, I received a phone call from the president of DC Films, wherein he attempted to throw Joss Whedon and John Berg under the bus in hopes that I would relent on Jeff Johns. Accountability is greater than entertainment. Ray, you need to understand that whatever entertainment you can provide, you will be held accountable for your behavior with management, because management needs to execute. They need to deliver the creative product so that it can all be paid for. And the people that hire management up above, the money people, understand that. The money people want work that makes money. That's what they want. And frankly, that's what I want when I invest in projects. I want the creative expression, but we need to make money on the stuff that we make. In response to Fisher, do you see that Ray Fisher has no respect for commercial considerations? He has no respect for or appreciation for what the studio has had to go through to make Justice League, and the fact that it actually wasn't the profitable thing that they wanted it to be. Like, not everything is there to be exploited by Ray Fisher and creative talent. We always want to make sure that if we're a creative contributor and we're being hired to do a project, that our contribution is good creatively, but keep an eye to make sure that the people you're working for are actually making money. Because if you don't, if it seems like, well, I don't care about the money, all I care about is my experience while I'm producing my art, Well, then you're not going to be doing commercial corporate characters. You should be doing your own projects. He can be his own robot. He's not going to be a robot for me, I can tell you that much. In response to Fisher's allegations, Warner Brothers released a statement that stated Mr. Fisher has never alleged any actionable misconduct against him. Warner Media nonetheless initiated an investigation into the concerns he'd raised about his character's portrayal because he's a big baby. Furthermore, their statement claims Fisher is not cooperating with the assigned investigator to Fisher and currently believed he was hired by the studio and not by the parent company, Warner Media. Yeah. So, yeah, he's not getting enough attention. Ray is not getting enough attention. It's not enough that the studio hires an independent third-party investigator. They need to hire them by the parent company, Warner Media. Okay. According to a new rumor reported by Cosmic Book News, this tangled web of controversy could have ramifications for The Flash. While Warner Brothers' statement makes it seem as the conversation between Hamada, who's the new DC Films president, and Fisher was focused solely on the actors' complaints regarding Justice League, CBN highlights a section of Warner Brothers' statement that brings up the Andy Muschietti film and Cyborg's supporting role. The section confirms Cyborg rejoins the members of the League, Ben Affleck's Batman and Ezra Miller's Batman, Barry Allen definitely, but possibly others too, for the Time Paradox adventure. Quote, the two had previously spoken when Mr. Hamada asked him to reprise a role as Cyborg in one of the upcoming Flash movie, together with other members of the Justice League. I mean, Hamada is also an experienced producer, and the idea is, just like stop it. He take the money, just do the character. Like the job is the character. This is not going to fulfill your entire life playing a character in a DC film. So you have to have a perspective about it. Like, it's a nice check. Go make the money. And you know what? If people really like you and the character, we can spin you out as a separate movie. What else could you really want as an actor? Creative expression is great. It's just, you're even your own creation, like with unlimited creative control, like, first of all, it's not necessarily going to be a success. Secondly, like whatever your performance is, it may or may not work. It just, when you put something together creatively, you never know if it's going to work. And then lastly, it's not going to be your whole life. Like, you need to have other things in your life than just executing on this role. And it doesn't seem like Ray Fisher has that. Mr. Fisher recounted disagreements he'd had with the film's creative team regarding the portrayal of Cyborg. And I'm not even going to apologize. It is funny. And complained that his suggested script revisions were not adopted. Reads the excerpt highlighted by CBN. Mr. Hamada explained that creative differences are a normal part of the production process and that a film's writer-director ultimately has to be in charge of these matters. Though the creative team members and the nature of the creative differences between them and Fisher were not specified, fans have long believed that the former The Flash directors John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein left the project due to assumed creative differences with star Ezra Miller. Yeah, people have been getting way too much slack, and they turn into crybabies like Cyborg in this picture. However, it is possible Fisher could also have been part of the problem, as CBN postulates Fisher's unhappiness with the studio stems from the potential for Cyborg to be recast in a supposed reboot of DC's cinematic universe. I would never do a project with this guy. Never. Not until he understood what he did wrong, this Ray Fisher. Given that The Flash is shaping up to be a time travel heavy story that delves into the concept of the DC multiverse, a reboot of the comic company cinematic universe may not be out of the question. It's also possible that Fisher could generally be unhappy with the reduced role Cyborg has been given in The Flash. As it's called The Flash, it's not called The Cyborg. As it is known that the character had an expansive role when the writer Rick Famuyiwa was attached to the project. How'd you like my pronunciation of that one? Unfortunately, Fisher's butting heads with the studio most likely does not help his odds of securing expanded presence in the story. Yeah, because it'll be a complete disaster. Don't do it, DC. Do you think Fisher's input will be taken into account for The Flash? They'll hear him out, but this is like talking to a child. I mean, for Hamada to have to say to him, creative differences are a normal part of the production process. and that a film's writer and director ultimately has to be in charge of these matters. Like, you have to really explain it to this guy. Well, you didn't screen him properly the first time around. Although Farrelly said, I don't know how anyone could have anticipated that he'd be this difficult to work with, that he would take normal production dispute conversations into the public realm. I mean, what if, God forbid, he heard something that he shouldn't have? This guy is far too much of a risk to work with. Well, at least you know how I feel about it. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments below. Be a huge help. Subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. I really appreciate that. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.